Hi everyone. Wow, it has been so long since I've posted a video on my channel, and apologies. I've actually had a few people saying, are you okay? What's going on? And you know what? It really shows where I'm at right now with what's going on with my channel, because the last 2 or 3 videos that I put out, they came out really quickly. And then there's been a massive gap. And the likelihood is that that's going to happen again, because whilst I haven't put anything out, it's not because I haven't done the recordings and the interviews and the discussions. That's all happened. It's just been the actual sitting here and putting the videos out and editing them. It's, for me, doing that is revisiting the interview again. And where I'm at the moment, the videos that are coming out, I mean, this was searching for truth anyway. It was always going to be relatable, a lot of it, to my own story. But now, this is huge. This is so relating to absolutely everything that is raw and going on with me right now. And every interview discussion that I have is unearthing even more for me to work on. So it's just mind-blowing. It's a whirlwind. It's beautiful. And this discussion with Kathy was about 3 weeks ago, and it's powerful. She was the first guest that I had back in 2020, and it was around adoption. But for me, certainly, things have moved on massively with my awareness of adoption, or should I call it adoption. And I talk about this in the interview, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But Kathy, founder of Childbirth Concierge in Florida, she knows a lot more about all of this going on with the primal wound. So from me to you, enjoy this interview with Kathy. And please let me know your feedback in the comments in the actual YouTube, because that will really help the algorithms and get more people seeing the video. So from me to you, thank you so much. Share, 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 share. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do. And I will always be back eventually. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Oh, Kathy, it's really odd, because if I know we've been trying to talk for a while, but if we'd have spoken 2 months ago, then it would be a completely different conversation for me now.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really would be. Let me change the view there. But yeah, so and the more that this journey's gone on for me with adoption, just in the last few weeks, the more I've thought, wow, I need to talk to you, Kathy. And then when you came back to me and I mentioned the primal wound, and then you sent me, what was it called? I've already
In utero.
Yeah, today, the lady I've just spoken to, I'm going to send it to her. Another adoptee, she's 64. She only picked up the Primal Wound book recently. And just so many revelations, like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. So that film, so I just know that we're supposed to be having a chat. I mean, it's coming up for 2 years now since my first episode with you.
Has it been that long? Wow.
Yeah.
Cheers.
When did your because this is going to go out. I know it's a quite informal, but it is going to go out. So I will say in this, I encourage anybody to go and watch the episode of me and you as well, because that will just, that was nearly 2 years ago. So just watch that rather than go through everything. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is about the now. This is about now, right? So you can go back. But I do want to just find out from you. Obviously, you found your birth mother through DNA ancestry, or you didn't find them. Your brother found you.
Right. Well, I had done mine, and then 18 months later, he did his, and then that's when it connected. I just wanted to know, am I Chinese, Japanese, like where, where do I belong? Like what genre of people do I even belong to? never expecting, because I just kind of given up, never expecting that they would connect and do so.
Yeah. So I want to connect the dots a bit with where we were at last year. When was it that your birth mother, because you did finally get to see her, and there's a beautiful video footage of you in the hospital, seeing her for the first time. Wow. Yep. It's kind of just makes me a bit emotional thinking about it. When was that in relation to when we did the video? Was that before we did?
I met her about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. Gosh, it's been like going on. Yeah. I'm just like in my head counting. Yeah. So, and I only met her that one time. She was 94 and she died in her sleep maybe a few months later, and I had never gotten back. She had dementia. So, it wasn't like you could just go hang out and ask questions and catch up on, 50 something years. So, but, we did get to connect, which was important.
Very important. Very important.
Yeah.
And I remember then, I mean, when I look back at the little parts of that interview and consider where I'm at now, I realized that I really didn't have a clue, Kathy, that a lot of the hidden, I'm going to call them hidden emotions, because I feel like what this awakening is for me right now is I feel as though I'm confronting a part of me that not only have I been protecting from others, but I've been protecting from myself. I don't know if that makes any sense. I feel like
completely.
And I just said to the lady that I was talking to earlier that I'm noticing in the last week or so that when I laugh, I'm laughing from a deeper place. I almost feel like I'm accessing somewhere. I'm on a journey.
The word that comes to me is authentic. That's what so I can identify, right? Because of being adopted. And yeah, where we were when we did the last, I have uncovered leaps and bounds of stuff. And I think for me, when I, connected back to my subconscious, right? And anybody listening to this, the subconscious is your computer program of your body, how you operate, what you do, how your survival.
It knows everything.
Yeah. It's just an accumulation, and it's dictating how you go forward until you can connect, address, and, shift, if you will. So, from what I've discovered in the last few years is that I was always in a place of needing to prove myself because at any given time I could be taken out, right? Because I was being put up for adoption. So I was scared to death I wasn't even going to get born, right? Because back in '67, abortion was there. So that was a possibility. So there was always that sense. So I think for me, and I don't know if the word is I had an air about me, but I was always I better impress, I better produce, I better do to validate why I should be here on planet Earth, instead of just embracing, wow, I'm here on planet Earth and I'm okay just how I am. And so I guess that's where, when you said that, I think of the word authentic, because you're connecting into a deep place. You don't have to have a laugh to be liked, or a laugh to, I don't know if that's coming across, but that's what I see. I kind of went through a little depression piece in January, because as I come more into who I am, I was like, well, I don't have to prove anything. So maybe I should just go live in a cabin somewhere. Like, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay to just go live off grid.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to prove something. And that was really took me like, what the heck am I feeling and why? Because it's always been that drivenness to be accepted, the drivenness to be liked, the drivenness for all these things. Because being adopted, I was given away. And if I was given away at my core of who I was and who created me, then at any time there's nothing secure around it. So.
And I remember you mentioning that you did have some therapy. You did timeline therapy. So I've just seen a lovely little sweet dog in your back.
Oh no, there's two of them. I guess they don't want to hear what I have to say. Oh no, one's still behind me.
No, it's so cute.
There's three of them. Yep, there's the other one.
Because I've studied timeline therapy, and I know I was like practicing it with you, but then you went to someone who's been doing it for a lot longer, and you had some really big results with that, didn't you? Can you share some of that? Because there's something that I've actually shared with you. I'll let you tell the story, but where you felt a release around your joy.
Oh yeah.
So can you just sort of go through that then? Yeah.
So it was around the reason I reached out. He's called the mind mechanic, and the reason I reached out to him is because I was like, I just was like that. I guess you call it oppressive, depressive, whatever it was, but it was like, do I grow my company more? Do I just go get the cabin in the woods? You know, what do I do? And his statement to me is, why can't you do both? I'm like, I never thought about that. But what we did and how we went back is we did go back and access my subconscious to what I was feeling in the womb. And what my mind's eye saw was this unborn baby just cowering over in the corner, you know, just like this. And when the current me, right, like where I am today, how you see and hear me, he said to me, do you want to ask that baby anything? You know, that unborn baby. And my question that came to mind is, what am I supposed to do? Like, almost like, what's our purpose here on earth? Like, why am I here? What am I doing? And it was that little unborn baby said to me, people need to know they're seen, they're heard, and they're of value. And it just resonated so deep with me, because my life up to that point, I never truly felt seen, heard, or valued. And so I put myself in relationships that reinforce that. You know, there's like this whole myriad of things. And I'm not saying that people really didn't see or hear me, but how I felt about myself, how I valued myself was that, right? And so in the womb, when I kind of said to myself, what did I hear inside the womb? Because that is all, babies hear from in the womb, 6 months of age, in, you know, pregnancy. I heard my mother say, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. And then I said, okay, well, what did I hear the father of me say, whom I've never met? He is passed. Nobody can ever know about this baby. Nobody's to ever know about this baby. And I instantly realized I've always had to prove myself, to prove value, that I you know, I'm worthy to be on this planet and moving around, because nobody was supposed to know about me. So once again, the silencing my voice, my value, right? So when he had me look at where I was now and what did I wanted to ask that baby, it was, people need to, you know, they need to know they're seen, they're heard, and they're valued, which was just like it was like instantly I knew. And I don't even know to tell you what I knew, but I knew that I knew. So then I'm taking like a 3-hour session, giving us like this little nugget here. And then he said, okay, let's go in your mind's eye, like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. What do you see? How do you see yourself? And instantly, and I'm just sitting there quietly, right? And instantly I see the back of me. I'm sitting behind, and I see this elderly woman, gray-headed, but still chic and funny, at a lectern and addressing like hundreds of thousands, I wouldn't say hundreds of thousands, but thousands of people there. I mean, I was addressing a huge arena. And I'm like, and he goes, okay, what does she turn around and say to you? And I'm like, that was, it's a little bit different if you're not used to this kind of therapy or modalities, right? But I'm just like, I need a breakthrough. So I said, what would you say to me? And I turned around to my current self and said, let's go, bitches. And I knew instantly that moving forward in everything I did was that people need to be seen, heard, and valued. Whether I do it in business, whether I do it in friendship, whether I do it just meeting somebody on the street, that we so need to be heard and connected, and we are of value. So it was very, very interesting. It was an incredible breakthrough, and it is almost like that oppression, heaviness, whatever it was, it just completely lifted. And I've been going, okay,
about
let's
your
roll
jaw as well. I thought that was fascinating.
Oh yes, thanks for bringing that up.
The
So
release of the jaw.
later that evening, well, not later, I mean, just within hours, I just noticed that, oh my gosh, I was just aching. And I mean, just like I took Advil, I was hurting so bad. So I touched base with the mind mechanic, Mohammed, and I said, what's that all about? And he said, well, often you have emotions that are trapped in certain parts of your body. And when you go in and you release it, that is a residual of what is happening. He said, I've just learned anything and everything can happen. So then I was like, okay, well, what was this all about? And I really think it's where I held tension. And the first time I ever noticed it was, I got caught up in New York City with the Hurricane Sandy that was coming in. And I live in Florida. We deal with hurricanes all the time, but up in New York City, they didn't know how to deal with the hurricanes. And it was a little stressful. And when I finally got out of the city and had to drive back to Florida because the flights were all canceled, I noticed that that's the first time ever I was very cognitive of all of this. What's very interesting is I think as I've been coming down more into out of that fight or flight, right? Like just coming more into homeostasis in my body as I work through things. I am very sensitive to picking up where I hold it here. And I'm not sure if it's because I'm a talker. I'm not sure if I feel like I had to talk myself into being valued in the world. I always used to tell people, you didn't have a chance not to like me. I was going to be up front in your face and likable before you ever had a chance not to like me. Why? Because at my deep core, I needed to be accepted. Now, I don't want to say I don't give a flying flip, but I'm okay. If people don't like me, I'm okay because I love me and I like who I am. And so if they don't like me, I'm not offended. That's them, not me. So
beautiful, beautiful. Well, there's so many things going on there. The first thing that came to mind was like this sort of almost catching up with yourself. You know, when you said that when you turned round and I've been getting that a lot. And I said it I know you watched the chat I did with Pauline, really about like, I'm here now and like my younger self. It's like this uniting. What does upset me, if I'm honest, is I don't know if I've ever shared with you, and I haven't shared, but I'm quite happy to share these tremors I used to get from the age of about 20. Suddenly I was getting my mascara done, and the lady, when they, when you sat on the chair and they come close up, and suddenly I went, my whole face like shook and my body shook, and I had these trembles. And it's a secret that I kept to myself for 20 years. I didn't tell anybody. There would be scenarios that I would be in where I wouldn't dare pick up a cup because I knew my hand would shake. And it would usually happen if I got too close to people. And when I went to understand a little bit about brain trauma, the brain and trauma, that's when I realized that this has probably got something to do with something that happened to me when I was younger. Right up until recently, I assumed it was to do with abuse, i.e. I was frozen. Like at the moment that this guy did this, I literally froze. So I was like, oh my goodness, that makes sense, because apparently what these things are is it can happen in your 30s, 40s, 50s. Suddenly it's like almost like a flashback with your conscious mind. So you're just like in this state, like it's the freeze state. It's the flight or
Right.
freeze. Come back in my 20s. Now I'm learning all about this freeze, this frozen adopted baby. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's another area of my life that I'd assumed was abuse, color, never adoption. And I feel like I'd put up throughout no fault of my own because of lack of understanding, lack of being told any of this, not just me, but my adopters. There's this understanding of this. I didn't know any of that. So right up until now, I have assumed that and put all of these, this hidden self feeling. I've put everything else responsible other than my adoption until now. And it's like, wow. You know, when I found these groups, I know I've spoken to you, Kathy, and it was such a beautiful interview. I've had such lovely, lovely feedback from that interview we did. But when I first came into these groups 2 months ago, I was shell-shocked when I read all the pain, the suffering, the disconnection. And then, of course, the whole pain and suffering that can come trying to find that connection. And all the while, I'm discovering none of these souls had a freaking clue that this goes as far back as inside the womb. And
because we are conscious beings inside the womb.
Can you imagine any birth mother that really ends up giving her child up for adoption, having those soothing words whilst you're in the womb? Can you not only imagine stress and panic, probably from the moment they've discovered that they're pregnant, and the roller coaster of anxiety that would have gone into our bloodstream?
Well,
it's logical now. I'm almost like,
right, makes sense. Well, I went to a conference in 2020, right before COVID hit. And it was on lactation. I'm a board certified lactation consultant, been in maternal health for 33 years. And they had someone speaking it was on placenta. And I remember looking at the outline and going, why are we at lactation, placenta, whatever. And it was right after I had read the emotion code and had even said, okay, I'm going to go back in my subconscious. And what did I hear in the womb, right? Like what did I hear back there? And they were talking about the placenta. And we've always known, we've said that if a mother who is pregnant has a flight or fight response, right? The placenta, there's a release of all this cortisol in your system, right? But the placenta will kind of, in essence, put a guard up and say, oh, no, you're not going to imprint on the fetus, on this unborn baby, because it's just a fight or flight. You know, you're driving a car and the kid ran out in front, and you had to slam on your brakes, right? But what they've identified, and it's a much longer study that they're doing, but they had released some of the preliminary findings, is that when the pregnant mother is exposed to the traumas, and everybody gets to decide what their traumas are. We're not talking about just being yelled at or hit. It could be being in a food desert, you don't have enough finances, where's your partner, right? Like traumas get to be defined by the individual. Yeah. So when there's consistent trauma, the placenta identifies and goes, well, this is normal. So it downregulates, it takes its defenses down. And then that baby is imprinted with that high wash of cortisol. So then that baby's born, and they're set at a much higher level versus where a baby that parents weren't exposed to that and didn't have are at a different homeostasis level in cortisol. And so that's where I had just read the emotion code. I had just done that work here in my own office on my own. And then I went there and I went, oh my gosh. In some cultures, the placenta is considered the seat of the soul. And in royalty in some of these cultures, when the king or whenever they're born, the placenta was dried and it was held in a separate location until that royalty died. And then when they were buried, the placenta is brought back and laid on the body when they're buried, because it's considered the seat of the soul. And I was like, oh man. And you think about, what is that connection between the mother and that infant? And it is the placenta. I mean, that is the organ that is, providing nutrients, providing oxygen via the blood, providing all of that. And it just like, oh my gosh, took me to a different level. So very interesting.
The field that you're in. So just repeat again what you said earlier, what you do. So just say that, because I'm quite fascinated by what it is you've ended up being.
Yeah. So I own the company Childbirth Concierge. I am a certified childbirth educator. I'm a certified doula, and I'm a board certified lactation consultant. So peripheral to midwives and obstetricians, we're in the same arena. And my work is education and support around pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum. So.
And what, I don't think I asked you this on our first interview. What was it that got you into this field? Is it something that you always knew, or how did you end up like?
Well, I had a girlfriend who ruptured her waters at 34 weeks. And I'd had a baby like maybe 6 months earlier. And she called me and she said, we only went to one Lamaze class. Can you come to the hospital and help me? And I was like, sure, I'll come. I mean, I'd just done it myself, so I'll come. And so it was a pretty, hindsight, quick labor. And I remember coming home and telling my husband, I got to do this. And he goes, what, become a doctor? And I'm like, no. And he's like, become a nurse? I'm like, no. Midwife? No. And he goes, what? And I'm like, I don't know. I was just bedside, and I just supported both the mom and the dad. This is what I want to do. And so there's a whole thing doula wasn't even a doula back then. We used the name childbirth assistant. I mean, there's a whole other different podcast genre on those things, right? But one of the things I noticed earlier in my career is that I could love unconditionally with this family. It was very different around my own family, even my own children. And when I did the internal work to figure out why was that, I was not as vulnerable with them, because I didn't, when I supported them, I came home to my own bed, to my own family. I could be authentic with them without any, they had hired me, they had welcomed me in, so I could just be how I needed to be with them. Whereas with my family, it was very vulnerable. Wasn't sure I was accepted or loved, or however you want to. So that was a big turning point, even in my career, of what. And it is really interesting, the journey of where I am. And now I'm working on the book, Peace of Mind, Childbirth and Breastfeeding, because I guess because of my journey and what I've learned and, experienced, I want women to feel at rest in this process. And we know with epigenetics, even if you do have a trauma in pregnancy, epigenetics allows for us to heal that trauma. We can heal it. We don't have to be stuck in it. But until people like you in podcasts and opening up, we stay just totally operating out of that trauma and not even knowing it, because we're in, quote, survival mode. See, I think I'm just now starting to live. I've been in survival mode all those years. Now I can embrace and go, wow, this is cool.
Well, I'm getting excited about living. I am living obviously where I am, but I'm excited about what more there is because of this journey, and how much more there still is. I'm thankful that I have the tools that I have to go through this, but I know I'm not fully there. I completely can relate to what you're saying about the authenticity with others, and then you like within your family. But that's us, isn't it? It's not our family. That is totally utterly how we feel in ourselves, about ourselves,
right?
And I know I'm still on a journey with that, and I think that's why noticing and observing this laugh, this sort of extra free expression coming from somewhere makes me smile. Because whilst I'm on this journey, I'm also going to that place and crying. It's a very deep, deep place that I wonder, Kathy, if it was that we're all feeling it. We're all, you know, your feeling that you had with that new parents, you know, was there maybe a subconscious connection with your, you know, yourself, your primal wound, your, you know, the connection that you weren't perhaps consciously aware of at that point? I wonder if there was something going on there that was, do you know what I mean? Like, I know,
did I connect it to myself?
Well, I know that I help. I'm in this arena of healing because deep down, there's healing needed for myself. So it's a natural thing for me to heal because I've become an expert at healing myself. Do you know? And so therefore, but really the real person that is next to be healed is myself. But I've been doing all this work for others. So I'm just wondering if there's some kind of relation in that with you and the work that you do. You know, have you been maybe doing a lot of the work to nurse everybody else, whilst, because it's easier to do that than to look after ourselves?
Oh, well, that's what my whole career has been.
That's
my
what I'm
career
getting
has
to,
been
I guess.
nurturing women and mothers. And now I'm 54. And it's only been in my 50s, my early 50s, that I'd realized, oh my gosh, so here's where I think things are, is we're traumatized. And I think people either come from a place of we're going to be bitter and our life kind of projects that, or we are able to be self-aware. We didn't even though we're not consciously aware, but we want everybody else to be nurtured and loved because that's what we missed in the womb, primal, right? Early, however you want. So I know I've talked to you about this, but we've never done it on camera, and it is extremely vulnerable because it's almost woo-woo out there, right? But when I read the emotion code, and we're talking about placenta, and we're talking about to self, right? So I read the emotion code. Wow, this is really vulnerable because this is going to be out in the airways and the highways and the byways, but it's my truth. I sat literally here in this office, in this chair, and I closed my eyes and I said, okay, subconscious, what were you exposed to, right? And I heard, like I just shared earlier, I heard my mother say, I don't know what to do. I heard father say, nobody can know about this baby. I was given up for adoption at the hospital. Well, then I thought, okay, so if this subconscious stuff is really real, because remember, I was all new to it a couple of years ago, I said, what did I feel? What were my feelings in the nursery? So I've been separated from my mother and I'm waiting for this other family to show up and claim me. And I'll tell you immediately what I saw is a cute little baby. We've all seen them in the plastic little bins, you know, the QB things, and they're all like, you know, tight burrito babies in their blankets. But the placenta was coming from the navel area, and a good sized placenta is about the size of a dinner plate, you know, about 10 or 12 inches in diameter. And that thing was hovering up above this baby, which was me. And it was kind of doing this radar, like, ba, 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 ba. And the feelings were, who's coming for me? Who wants me? Who's coming? Who's coming? And it was bizarre because the blanket's wrapped, but the umbilical cord is attached. And it was so interesting. I couldn't do anything with it. Okay. So now I go to that conference I just told you about. Now I'm like, okay, there has to be something here. We're talking about placenta. There has to be something here. So I called a good friend of mine, Michelle Smith, who does hypnobirthing, who does hypnosis, who does that. And I said, Michelle, we need to really work on what is this? So we did a session, and it was trying to figure out where that placenta was needing to connect to. Because remember, in the womb, it is connected to the uterus. When the baby's born, then it will come out. But I'm in the nursery of the hospital, and the placenta is looking at who to connect. So it's very interesting. So she just kind of guides me through, and she said, well, is it to creator? Is it to your creator? And I kind of was sitting there. I was like, no, we kind of tried these different things. And I said, maybe it needs to connect to myself. And the second I said that, that placenta in my mind's eye, yet again, goes, and immediately this baby grows legs, kind of like spaghetti, almost like the legs come out and over the bin. My arms come up over the bin. I stood up out of that thing and walked out of the nursery like this. And I was like, what was that? What was that just went on?
Was that a session you were at then, or was that on, what was this, a therapy session that you were in while this was going on?
No, she's just a good friend of mine, and we're both in birth.
Wow.
So we're just on the phone. I don't even think we were on video. I think we were on the phone. But what I realized too, and see, this is where the emotion comes. I was never connected to myself. I was all, because self was given up for adoption. I always looked everywhere else. Who did I belong to? I first and foremost belonged to me. I belonged to me. And that was a huge game changer for me. And I think that's when I really began to stop looking everywhere else for validation. I was enough. I could validate myself.
Wow.
It was huge.
Oh,
it was huge.
And you know what I'm thinking when you're saying what going through that sort of practice you did with your friend, is you were acting out practices that I am learning about now with Gabor Mate and another guy who have been, you know, working with their own deep traumas. What you did there by going back compassionately, inquiring into what you were thinking, feeling at that particular point is it, because it's like an untangling of something that's unconscious that's actually really there, that once it's untangled and understood, you can literally just move and walk away, because the only thing that's tight,
it was like, it was instant. It was like, oh all right then, we're all good.
I love that. I love that example, because that actually is really what can happen almost instantly. Because that was the only thing that was tying you up, just like as we are now as adults, just being able to go back and understand it, because you're still a baby. I mean, you're not even a 3-4 year old. I don't know, you are.
I was a newborn.
Exactly. How can you do that really without this woo-woo feeling? I mean, how can you? Because you can't go back there. You have to do what you just did there, and it can be the hardest thing. I just think it's so wonderful that you did that with your friend.
Well, you know, I tried to fix myself all those years, right? And it didn't work. So, we're constantly trying to fix. And then I think I started connecting on the things that were, I hate to use the word cerebral, but, our head, our heart and head are connected. And where's the disconnect? See, the heart, in essence, let's face it, was broken. I was given up. My own family gave me up. Where I came from gave me up. And I'm not blaming. I am not by any of that at all. These are just real facts of life. And so that heart was disconnected. So the head takes over. And the head becomes how everything works. And it's not till you connect these two things. And of course, with heart math, we know the heart sends more messages to the brain than the brain does to the heart. You can actually, 3 to 4 feet out from you, heart rate variability, you can pick up from somebody else, right? There's just so much of that when you all start connecting the dots. I started coming out of this sterile living, if you will, and started connecting to see, remember, because self was given up, that's the most dangerous place to connect to. I mean, that's what your brain tells you, but that's not what we really need to do. That's exactly what we need to do. So it's the lie that we believe.
Yeah. it is, as my friend that I spoke to, Steve Price, would say, like a part of your core self, literally like frozen in time. And I could relate to that so much when I consider how sometimes I'm like, I know I feel, and I know I feel really deeply, and I've cried and cried and cried to sleep for myself, but mainly for others. But I've always felt that I'm holding back from really feeling, like even the real joy and emotions of meeting my birth family. I've felt as if I was holding back, like I'm forever not allowing myself, and that's what this awakening is for me, Kathy. It's like suddenly I'm like, I now understand why, for the first time. I could have had
The safety net. It's a survival. You know, part of my healings and progresses of I've had to thank that part of me that allowed me to survive to today, but I don't need to stay in that place. And one of the therapists that I worked with, that, you know, it's all like, you know, those little precept, you know, these little steps you take, because it would be too much if it was like the, you know, the fire hose was turned on with us. But she said, you know, your intellect is extremely high. It's what has caused you to survive. Your emotional, she said, is very, very immature. And it was really interesting, because if I go back to what goes on in my head when something comes up, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Well, where did I first get that? That's what my subconscious took me back to. My birth mother didn't know what to do. So for me, it's always like, oh, am I going to make the right decision? Am I going to, like, you're not going to see that, the peripheral on me. People will tell me I'm very direct, I'm very this, but they're not privy to what is the processes that go on. And the inside process, oh my gosh, am I going to am I going to do I got to do the right thing. What is the right thing? Oh my gosh, what if I don't make the right thing? What could it cost me? You know, all of that internal dialogue that goes on, you know, so survival.
And is there anything that you can say to people? Obviously, you hit on a point there which I can relate to, is in over the years of this journey, even though the adoption is like a big wow at the moment, there's been a journey, a healing journey through trauma over the last 20 years for me. And so I have, without realizing it. But is there anything you can say to anybody that's watching this, that's adopted, that's not well, I don't know. Is there anything more that you would like to say before?
I love mirror work, because you're looking at you, right? So can you look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. I'm really proud of you. You're gorgeous. You know, you really got this. If you can't do that without the eyes darting away, or like, oh, or just standing there like frozen because you can't speak, that's a sign that there's just work to be done. That's all. So then ask yourself in the mirror, what is it that we need to work on? What is it? Is it just showing? Maybe it's just choosing every day something small to love on yourself. Maybe it's buying that magazine that's $3 that you enjoyed buying that magazine. Maybe it's having that cup of tea on the back porch. Look, he's stretching himself out. The back porch, or, you know, whatever, something that nurtures you. And if you've never nurtured yourself, which I hadn't, right? Like I had to go through these processes. It was, okay, self, what is it that nurtures you? And it's so funny. We laugh about it in the house, but I don't know, not that long ago, I'd say in the last 6 months or so, Jim called me and I don't even remember the whole conversation right now, but it was something I said to him. I said, you know, I said, self, what about this? And we laugh about that. Self says, right? Self. But in essence, ask self, what does self need to do to feel loved, to feel good, right? Like to nurture self. And I would say anybody, that's where you start, because it's true. You said in the beginning, if you don't love yourself, really, how authentic are we when we project out? So are we projecting what we want people to see? Are we projecting authentic self? And people, we know, right? People say to me all the time, you're so easy to talk to. I think it's because I've done the work. I think I understand most people. I may not have walked in their shoes, but I think I'm an extremely compassionate person. I may not make choices other people make, but I'm intelligent enough to know that it's none of my business what they choose. They're choosing based on what their programming is, what they've been exposed to. So I think I love mirror work, because you don't have to rely on anybody else.
Yeah, I love that. And we did touch on that in the first interview as well. So I love that you've mentioned that again. It's a beautiful thing. And I don't do that enough, but I do know that me practicing doing videos in 2017, when I look back at those videos now, I realized I was really talking to myself and getting familiar with myself. And which is why I'm so confident doing videos now. But I went through a year of, getting comfortable with myself. And in a way, it is like a mirror. You're looking at, and now I don't have a thing with it. And I have people saying to me, how come you're so confident in there? And I said, well, it takes a bit of practice, because I've actually, through that process, had to learn to become comfortable with who I am and see myself and put myself out there. And what I realized is a lot of the messages I was saying were actually for me. But what is
this when you got this coming out? Yeah. You got all this coming back.
Yeah, three of them coming back there, baby. Oh, Kathy, thank you so much. There's so many nuggets in this. I know there really, really are. I feel so blessed to know you.
Oh, ditto. For all these years too.
Yeah.
And yet we've never met in person.
I know. What's that going to be like, hey, when we meet? Oh my goodness. And the beautiful thing is we're getting closer now, actually in the same time zone. And only a few hours away. So it's soon come, baby, soon come.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good one. And I know Jim and Eric are we're going to have a great night. Or great day at the beach, whatever. I don't know.
That's right. Whatever it is.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was good.
It was good. It was good.
So funny feeling vulnerable about all that stuff. I know you'll edit through some of this, but it was like, oh wow, that's I've only shared that with a few people, but it was a huge game changer for me. Huge.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I read other stuff, and then I thought, well, why not try it for myself? I sat right here, sit at this desk right here, just closed my eyes and said, okay, subconscious, what did I feel? What did I see? We make it so much harder. Really, just if we were listen and be in tune to what self is saying.
Well, I might actually still put some of this into the interview, because
sure.
I just on what you've just said there, it is the work, but I am noticing the work I'm doing with Pauline is noticing, observing our triggers, and I am noticing my resistance. I am pushing the work away like you wouldn't believe, Kathy. I am finding all the excuses in the world as to why I should do the washing up rather than sit here now and be with myself, or why, oh no, my son's just called me. Yeah, okay, yeah, I can easily do that. And I'm really observing it. I'm not beating myself up, because I know throughout this journey, the one thing is to be kind to myself, but it's an observation and a half, like, oh my God, Donna, but
you can't adjust what you don't see. So recognition is the first piece. You have to see the pattern, you have to see, because otherwise we're oblivious to it and we're just operating out of what's been the past. So once you start seeing it, then you're like, oh, I need to, let me look at this. Let me shift and change. I find that with my book. I find like, who the heck am I to write a book? I'll like revert into that, and then I'll pop back and go, why shouldn't I? Why can't I? You know?
I had so many issues writing my first chapter of my book. So many, like, I can't do this, I can't do that, and I missed the deadline. There was so much going on with that. And then when I did it, and I did it overnight, over 2 nights, and it's just one of the best things I've ever done, really. And I'm like, wow.
But there was
so
a timing to it.
Yeah, there was a time. I knew I had to do it, but for me, because I was doing it for another author, it was her book, and she invited me.
Right.
But if that had been my book, it wouldn't have gone out. It would have been another. It wouldn't have done. But it was like, and she phoned me, and I said, I can't do it. I'm going to miss the day. And she said, no, you can do it, and you will do it, and you'll get it to me by Wednesday or whenever. And I was like, okay.
Okay, got it. Do it.
And then and that's the start, isn't it, Kathy? It's the start. I now know that I will have a book of my own one day, and maybe many more. In fact, the more I'm writing now around adoption, I think I actually might end up being an author full on.